Hello, listeners. This is Ian, your Gen X correspondent. You know what you clicked on. This is the Voivod interview. Voivod's one of the favorite bands here at the Toilet of Hell, and we've kept up with you throughout the years. But we've always talked with Chewy, so today we've got something special for you. Today we've got Michelle Away Langevin. Michelle, welcome to the toilet.
Thank you for having me. Well, it's the first time I hear welcome to the toilet.
I'm glad with your accomplished career, I was able to give you this humble first. But we're here to celebrate something bigger, I think. I mean, something that is more than a milestone in an artist's career. It's a pinnacle that few musicians ever get, and that's the orchestral treatment.
Yeah, it still seems like a dream to us. It was a pretty stressful experience, but really wonderful. Well, stressful on my end because as a drummer, if I miss one beat or one bar, the whole orchestra gets lost. I was really focused.
As somebody who's often playing percussion or bass and the only one with a bunch of melodic players, I can't stand it because if I know exactly what you mean. If I make the mistake, they know it's that guy with that instrument. It's the only one making that sound. But let's kick in right with the drummer's perspective on doing something like this because uh well, for one, in case listeners don't know what we're talking about, Symphonique is about to come out this summer, and it's Voivod's collaboration with the Montreal Symphony Orchestra.
Well, it started with the Montreal Symphony Orchestra because it's their original idea. And we did play two shows with them early last year. But the show we documented was the one in Quebec City with the Quebec Symphony Orchestra. But
Oh, okay.
it's exactly the same show because they rented the charts from the Montreal Symphony Orchestra. So the visuals was different, but the show is exactly the same.
So in a different orchestra, but the arrangement was already in place from the earlier concert with Montreal.
Yeah, yeah. We were suggested an orchestrator by the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, and Shui was very involved, um, like supplying charts for every song, and also ideas on how it could turn into something like a journey basically, and ideas like the band could stop there, the orchestra would keep going, and Snake could sing along with the orchestra and things like that, or the orchestra could play that intro and the band would just be waiting to start at this part. And so it was a long work. We spent a couple of years really building the show. I on my end, I was mostly involved with my art being animated by different artists for both Montreal Symphony Orchestra and the Quebec Symphony Orchestra. Um, but I did supply the orchestrator with some cues, like I mentioned the early cyberpunk movies like Mad Max, Terminator, Blade Runner, which really influenced us. And also, I mentioned the old movies, Planet of the Apes, because they had some avant-garde music thrown in with the soundtrack. So um, when we first got the demos from the orchestrator, Hugo Bégin, I immediately felt like I was in a dystopian sci-fi movie. So I think he really understood what we were aiming for.
The arrangement's really stunning, and I don't want to speak ill of other acts, but I'll call out Metallica just because they'll probably never talk to me. But Metallica's S&M I think stands out to a lot of people as a major like metal orchestral collaboration. But that arrangement is awful. It's just like humming strings in the background. It doesn't really, it's a live album with an orchestra present, but it doesn't sound like any thought was put into making the elements work together. Whereas what we hear on Symphonique is, I mean, this arrangement is just people who know the songs well, the originals. It is so exciting to think, oh wow, this next part's gonna come up. How are they gonna do that? And then it'll shift to like, oh, flutes are gonna do that. And it's for Chewie's part, I can tell like he's clearly worked out how when he's playing the rhythm part versus when there's a different instrument doing it, and they trade back and forth
Yeah.
seamlessly like that. This is a very thoughtful production.
Yeah, it was. There were many musicians, and at first, every single musician of the orchestra had a microphone to record the instrument. At first, it was like so many tracks. It sounded
You tried to wait, every instrument had a
yes,
mic?
every instrument, and yeah, there were leaks between instruments, of course, and so at first it was a big blurry mess. And I'm very impressed with what Francis Perron, who's been producing the albums with us for the past 11 or 12 years. I'm impressed with what he was able to do because in the end, you can hear every single musician from the orchestra and every member of Voivod as well. So I'm really happy with it. It sounds big and the arrangements and the orchestra. I think it enhances the cinematographic style of Voivod, and it made it really majestic. So quite a wonderful experience, and um, people will be able to enjoy it at least on vinyl and CD. We're gonna do the show again early next year in our hometown where Voivod formed in 1983. So it's exciting as well. With the same conductor, Dina Gilbert. Hopefully she'll be available every show if we ever take it on the road with local orchestras. And so because we developed this show for a couple of years, and it'd be great to have her all the. I really I watch her movements the whole show to make sure I'm really tight, and I didn't really change my style, but I learned to play drums a lot from punk and heavy metal, but also progressive rock, and some of it has a had a jazz-oriented vibe like Van der Graaf, Magma, or Soft Machine. So there are a lot of ghost notes on the snare drum on my end. So I tried to get rid of them for this show to be really precise with the orchestra, and so that was my approach. And on the technical end, we couldn't afford to have speakers and monitors, and so we all had in ears, so that, with a belt pack. So that was something I had to get used to as well. Otherwise, it went pretty well.
It sounds magnificent. It's so immersive. Again, compared to, a more poorly produced or less thoughtful collaboration. You can tell that you use your regular mix engineer for this because you know the way Voivod's supposed to sound, even if you add an orchestra in there. But at the same time, not to get too far into the weeds of the mixing, but if you listen to good classical music, it's not sound staged the same way a rock or metal album is. In order to be realistic and immersive, you have that thing that's unusual for pop music, where the bass is off to one side and the treble's off to the other side. And so as a meet, the very, I don't want to spoil too much for the listener if they haven't heard it, but the opening of the album is this double reed instrument doing this mysterious, I don't know if it's a bassoon melody or something that leads you in. But then when the guitar and bass hit, you realize, oh, this has been mixed for a classical. That we've got Chewy off
Yeah.
to on the treble side, we've got bass off on the right side, and it actually, so like it sounds very much like Voivod was mixed into the orchestra as much as the orchestra was mixed into a Voivod album. It's so fun on headphones. Do yourself
Yeah.
a favor, listener, put it on headphones.
That's true. I mean, the only thing, the only way we could achieve that, we had the soundman of the Quebec City, the Quebec Symphony Orchestra, to mix the orchestra, and our own soundman was mixing Voivod, and the soundman of the orchestra was feeding our soundman with groups of the orchestra, and everything was blended together. But in the end, we had everybody on separate tracks, which were a lot of tracks. But I was told that the show sounded amazing in the room. I'm actually not that familiar with other bands' experiences with orchestras. Even the Metallica album, I'm unfortunately not that familiar with. I'm mainly familiar with Asia, in Bulgaria. It's called Symphonia, and I really like the arrangements, and I also like the idea of the band going into a city and using the local orchestra. And like let's say for early next year in our hometown, it will be the local orchestra. So hopefully we'll be able to take it on the road and using the local orchestras. But I'm pretty sure every time we'll need the soundman of the orchestra to help our own soundman, which is not use of mixing an orchestra at all. And I think that's the way to do it.
Now, this is maybe a silly question. I'm trying to put myself in the mindset of when I was a teenager and I first discovered Voivod. If this were happening back then and it was me and I was a teenager and I had my metal band, but I played in the high school band, I would be begging to get these arrangements into my school so that we could put on our own. Is that something that would be possible? Is that something you've thought about, getting this arrangement out there so that colleges, orchestras, community bands could try to have their own Voivod experience?
Well, it'd be great, but the problem is the arrangement they belong to the Montreal Symphony Orchestra. So the Quebec Symphony Orchestra had to rent the charts from them, and that's what's going to happen early next year in our hometown as well. So it'd be a bit costly to make it available for everybody, unfortunately.
No, I get that, but they clear the rights to Broadway shows and stuff like that. So why not? I mean, why not this? That's what I would be. I would be all
Yes.
over this if I were much younger.
Yeah, actually, the conductor Dina, she has contacts with she's conducting a lot of different orchestras, and she had a lot of contact with other orchestras everywhere around the world, and she mentioned that she could submit this project everywhere, and that's where we are working on right now.
That's incredible. Now, I don't want to talk too much about this technical stuff for people who don't care all that much. So let's get into back into repertoire. How did you decide which songs you were going to feature on this album? When I heard that it was coming out, I had my guesses. I thought that I was right about a couple of them, like Into My Hypercube. I thought that'd make perfect sense, but I had the conscious thought, well, there's no way one of my favorite songs, Tribal Convictions, would be on there. I don't see how they would do that. And yeah, to my surprise, it's there
Mm.
and it's incredible. But so how did you decide what would be fitting for these kinds of adaptations?
Well, we tried to pick songs that were more on the progressive rock style because they had many movements, and we thought it would match properly with an orchestra. Some of the songs, mainly from Nothing Face, already had bits of modern classical in it. Back then we were really influenced by Bartok, Shostakovich, Penderecki, Stravinsky, and we a lot of it we picked from listening to soundtracks like The Shining, and Kubrick used a lot of modern composers' music into his films, and so we already included bits of that style of music into our music, and so some of the songs really screamed for symphonic adaptation, and so these were kind of easy to pick, and some of the songs like Forgotten in Space were influenced by like I was mentioning earlier, early cyberpunk movies like Mad Max, and so it was an easy choice. We didn't really go for the super fast, trashy songs, even though I know all members of both orchestras will have been able to play anything because they're used to playing Paganini and really fast stuff, you know. But we skipped Voivod, the song Voivod, and although we did keep Nuclear War from the first album because we thought it would sound scary like a military march with an orchestra, and it turned out pretty good. We really wanted to try the Sid Barrett song Astronomie Dominée with an orchestra, and it was wonderful. So picking the songs was not that difficult. Some members of the orchestras even busted us like, "Oh, there's this the Rites of Spring there," and so we were caught right there. And uh, I think the tricky part was to line up the songs so it would turn into a wonderful journey for everybody in the room, and that's what we worked on as well.
And could you go back and tell me more about the visuals for this? You said a big contribution of yours was adapting your art for video presentation.
Yes, I supplied a lot of art that was the artwork was animated by different artists with different mediums. Some used traditional 2D animation. Others did some CGI 3D animations. Other used AI, and so so all through the show, there's um, like very dystopian visuals in the back of the stage on a giant screen, which really help with this apocalyptic mood we were aiming for.
Can you tell me more about your experience with digital art? I know a bit about your early days being inspired by 70s album covers, heavy metal magazine, but one of the things that makes your art special, in my recollection, was albums like Nothing Face and Angel Rat were very, very digital pixel art looking at a
Yeah.
time when that was, my only reference for it would have been video games.
Yeah.
I don't, can you tell me about that? What were you doing at the time that inspired you to change mediums like that? And what kind of digital art were you looking at to draw inspiration from when there was just so little out there?
Yeah, I don't remember having anything to rely on in terms of digital art. The thing is, I studied science. When we started Voivod, I was going to university up north, and I didn't study art. So my first four paintings were aside from a very tiny painting I did in high school for my grandmother in art class, you know. I had never done paintings before, and my first professional paintings were the first four album covers for Voivod, and I used acrylic and a bit of airbrush, and but I had no technique, and it would take me months between recording and touring to do one album cover. So around 86, 87 ish, I bought an Amiga computer by a Commodore, which was really cheap, but also multimedia oriented, very ahead of its time. And that's where I started to do digital art for album covers, videos, the videos for Dimension Hatras, and the album cover for Nothing Face, and I just never stopped trying to adapt to newer software and for the past 40 years now. At first, friends were telling me it's not art, it's not art, but you ain't gonna win this fight, you know. And I really had to check out digital art, but like you said, there was nothing back then, so I actually had done some digital art in '84 on an Apple II with I think it was called mouse paint, and I did drawings with the mouse all through the '80s and the '90s. It was in the early 2000s when I was asked by Dave Grohl to do the art for his project Probot, and with the money was giving me, I bought a computer and a new computer and with a graphic tablet and a digital pen, and it made things a lot easier.
So is that your main workflow today? Pen to tablet?
Yes, I usually use my iPad with a digital pen with a very non-expensive software called Procreate, and it's really amazing. It's like 12.99 USD, and you have it for life. It's not even like you have to pay a license every month, or so it's quite incredible.
You know what's humbling to me is back in the 80s, I had that same Commodore computer and the same software, and I was looking at your thinking like he's got to have some sort of NASA computer that he's doing this with because it's nothing like what I can do. No, the difference was talent, and I too have Procreate on my iPad, and I can't do a damn thing with it. So
Yes. Back then, I only had Amiga 500 with, I think it was called Deluxe Paint. And if you wanted to have a good resolution, you had to only use sorry, 16 colors. If you wanted to use 64 colors, then you had a bad resolution. So it was a balance all the time. And I remember buying an external drive to store my drawings. It was 20 megs and cost a fortune. 20 megs these days is not even one drawing,
no, no, that's your blank file, your presets. So in related Voivod visual media news, are you involved at all with a video game that's been in development?
Yes, I've been involved with supplying a lot of art that is turned into old pixelated art like back in the days. I actually had to go back in the Commodore mode because I had to supply low-res art, and which is great. And Chewy is involved with turning the music into 8-bit style as well because
Wow.
it's all based on end of 80s, early 90s aesthetics. So we're aiming at finishing everything in June. So hopefully a release this year, maybe late this year, will be great. It's called Nuclear Warrior.
Nuclear Warrior, available on Steam. I assume we can find it there.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. Not a question you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I'm curious. What's in your sketchbook that you don't share with the world? If you're just sitting at a cafe, you got a napkin, you're in a boring meeting, you're gonna doodle. What are you drawing? The tree outside the window, the portrait of the guy across the
I've
table?
My favorite thing is on the road. When I after every night after the show, I in every city I do one drawing that expresses my day. I walk around the club, I check the architecture, and so the whole vibe of the city. I try to draw my style at the end of the night, and I post it online. So I always share my art. Um, I do a lot of digital art, but I love to use the notepad they leave in hotel rooms, and I have even used the pen that with it. So sometimes it's red, sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's a carbon pen, and so it's really fun to. It's actually my next book. It will be road art.
Road art.
Yeah, well, it's not titled road art, but it's the all the art I do on the road. So I have thousands of drawings over decades.
That's incredible. I'd love to see that.
I always post it online every day on Facebook, and I should probably do the same on Instagram, but I have a hard time keeping up with Facebook already, being a rock and roll drummer on the road and in the studio. Between touring. We are writing and recording a new album, so we're quite busy. And we can only afford to do 3 songs at a time between tours. So it will probably be available late next year, hopefully. And it's a concept album with the Kogel character coming back, and we're having a good time writing it and recording it. And I think the symphonic shows really influenced the writing of the next album, which will probably sound even more like sci-fi movie soundtrack, I think.
So you mentioned extending the Korgel storyline, and I guess there's no better person to ask. Whenever I've tried to explain Voivod as a story, I sound like a crazy person, and I'm sure I'm half wrong. Uh, could I
Well,
trouble you to please explain to me in your own words the Voivod story up to right now?
oh my God, it would take a long time, but it started in the
Okay, so
70s.
the brief version. Yeah.
Yes, okay, I'll do the time loop thing and the time tunnel. It started in the 70s when I discovered Metal Hurlant heavy metal magazine. I really wanted to be an artist for heavy metal magazine. It's when I created the Voivod character, some post-nuclear vampire living on the planet Morgoth. Is actually the guardian of Morgoth, and there are many different planets with different voivods, and but here's the one we're focusing on, and there's an evolution where it becomes Kogel, and then it becomes like a full on machine, and then like a tank, and then goes into space, and then he's always trying to expand the territory, which I mean is not a hero, that's for sure. Um, uh, more like a warmonger. I mean, I grew up in the Cold War era, and I saw a documentary in the early 80s called If You Love This Planet, a National Film Board of Canada documentary about nuclear stockpiles, and it really influenced my concept, which went pretty much from Dungeon and Dragons oriented stories to really really apocalyptic stories. So when we formed in 83, we were looking for a name. I mentioned Voivod, and then they were intrigued, the other guys in the band, and I explained the concept, and we developed it through the 80s over the first five albums. And and at one point on Dimension Atlas, the Voivod creates a micro galaxy, goes into it. It's not happy with the way it evolves and destroys everything in the end, and then goes into his brain for nothing phase. So Snake and I had a great time um, building the story for every album, and whenever we'd go on tour, we would buy Omni or Discover magazine, try to see what was going to happen 30 years down the road, and take it from there. But these days, you can't even predict what's going to happen next week. So it's pretty much based on the present, the stories we pick online, or it's pretty current with AI and all that. And so, uh, like I said at first, I found the name in a book from a French writer, Henri Verne, and a hero called Bob Moran, and there was the name Voivod on the cover, Le Talisman des Voivodes. And I thought it was a great name, and right after I read the book Dracula by Bram Stoker, where they explained that Dracula was a voivod, like a war. Like a warmonger, and so in a way, in my stories at first, the Voivod is making sure that high-tech weaponry doesn't get out of control on the planet Morgoth, but the way he achieves it is by like destroying enemies. And so uh, like I was saying, it's not really a hero, more a representation of the way the planet has been going for more than centuries now. Mhm.
And can you give us a little sneak peek of where this extension of the Korgel storyline might be going on the upcoming material?
Oh, we even though we did a template at it was more than a year ago already, in 8 chapters. We're still writing the music, and Snake is still writing the stories as we move along. Um, it's the typical apocalyptic dystopian Philip K. Dick style of multiverses and mixed with artificial intelligence and high-tech weaponry and um, but we're still developing the story though, which is exciting.
So the Voivod's never gonna get married, retire, have kids, move out to the country.
Well, as long as we're on our end, touring and recording, I think he has to follow us. Probably has a cane right now.
Well, he's still a warmonger to me.
He can still do it, and we still I mean, I'm amazed myself. We had a rehearsal yesterday for the upcoming tour, and I'm amazed how in good shape we still are. Snake and I, we are in our 60s now, so but it's still happening big time. We're playing more shows and we are more popular than ever. We're enjoying a great momentum, so we take care of our health and stay in shape and. Um, we have a pretty good stretch in Europe in June, July, and August. And so we learned from our friends Napalm Death, which we toured a lot with and share buses with. And we learned not to take days off because it's so expensive. So it's always a whole bunch of shows back to back. So I can tell you we're not party animals anymore.
Do you have a regime that you try to hold up on tour other than going back to back? Do you keep to a certain, I don't know, hydration schedule or sleep ritual or something like
I,
that?
well, I try to eat healthy and I don't necessarily have a diet, but I do, I mean, drums keeps me in shape, but I do register to this bicycle program where you have like a key and you take one bicycle from a station, you put it back to another station. It's called Bixie, and I do a lot of that, and it's helping me a lot. I don't have a car, so I go around town using this system, and there are some wonderful bicycle paths around the St. Lawrence River, and it's a pretty good hobby. Chewy is very active on his bicycle as well. He does like a lot of kilometers every day.
The cardio is essential.
Yes, yeah, especially on drums.
I
I
could
still
never.
go that we still write songs with a lot of double kick drums. So yeah.
Is that because you programmed them first and got yourself in trouble, or is double kick still sort of in your instinct?
Well, we've during the pandemic we developed a technique of building demos with programmed drums. So I program a lot of drums. Uh, I ruined my left shoulder for the Synchro Anarchy album, but because of the computer. So I sometimes I'll when we get into the studio to build from the demos. I have surprises like, oh, I did program this part way too fast. Or sometimes it's really hard to play double kick drums very slow. So I have to speed beats up a bit and minor adjustments in the studio. Some drummers are very good at playing very slow beats with double kick drums, like the drummer from Judas Priest is quite unbelievable.
Yeah, that's something that people don't talk enough about. We're always so wowed by ultra fast tempos, but there's a lot to be said for for the drummer in particular about getting that four limb coordination down at varying tempos. It's not all the same, and sometimes faster is way easier.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes you just need to crank it up just a tiny bit, and it becomes really easy. Yeah, but these are like I said, minor adjustments in the studio. But this we all synced with Logic Pro and Google Drive, and we all do our parts at home separately to build demos, and it makes for very good demos. And then, of course, it morphs into real Voivodian material once we get to the rehearsal space and then to the studio. It's a total other thing, you know. Then it becomes more human, of course.
How does that compare to your first time in the studio? I've asked this of Brian from Diamond Head and Doro from Warlock, and they all tell stories of being teenagers in the studios in the 70s and early 80s. And anyway, I invite you to tell your own
Yeah,
story.
it's yeah, well, we didn't have Pro Tools and everything was on tape and we were very experimental and so it was scary at times when we wanted to have like a reverse effect that you can do within seconds now. Back then you the engineer had to like flip the tape over, or sometimes you wanted to do something weird and you'd have to cut the tape with a razor blade, and that was like really stressful. And so it was a total different world. And also, back then we didn't have, well, like for War and Pain, we just had a couple of days to record. So it for a few albums, it was like everybody in the same room, live, and then you try it a few times, and by the second or third take, you're like, okay, how many mistakes did you do? I did three, and you two. Okay, we're good. Then, so for many albums, I can hear the mistakes on my end where I had to compromise, and then for I think starting with Dimension Hatras, it's getting harder for me to hear mistakes. But between 83 and 89, we rehearsed every night. And so that's why the band evolved so rapidly between War and Pain and let's say Nothing Face. It's almost not the same band. Like if you listen to the compilation by Noise, Voivod, the Noise Years, it's from Roar to Dimension Atlas. So it's from 86 to 88, from the first song on Roar to the last song on Dimension Atlas, it's like a different band, but we were so dedicated, writing the concept and the music, all living everybody in the same apartment, building everything every day together and touring a lot. And so things were going at a fast pace. These days, we have more luxury. We have, of course, we are on Central Media, Sony, a bigger budget, and so we can really build experimental albums with sometimes we'll have a string quartet or a brass quintet in, or and try to make albums that are very intricate and experimental. And to our own surprise, we are winning awards with these, like Junos in Canada. And so it's a good, it gives us confidence that we are on a good path, going back to the prog rock mode, and that people embrace it. So I think we're gonna go crazy for the next album. I don't even know if I answered your question, but
You did, but there's only one thing I would hope that you could expand on a little bit is what was going on with with the studio technology around the Dimension Hatros era um, that was contributing to the sound. Like were the boards getting digital recall, where it was probably
um,
pre-ADAT, but maybe editing was a little easier. Like in addition to the band as being better and tighter, what do you remember about those sessions?
well, for the Dimension Hatras session in Berlin, we were still with Harris Jones, who had done Killing Technology with us. But this time, it's mainly that we had learned to play our respective instruments a lot. We're trying to keep up with Piggy, really, who had started when he was 9 and was like a genius. And but I think that I was not satisfied with the way I was playing before the fourth album. But the thing that really changed everything was once we got to Berlin for the Dimension Hatras album, uh, Harris Jones had bought a sampler and a octopad, a Roland octopad, electronic pads. And that's really where I started to experiment more on the percussion side. And I didn't go crazy and put it everywhere, but it sort of changed our sound into more of an industrial vibe. But Harris Jones was already recording Neubauten in Germany and maybe D crops, and so he knew how to build a dystopian mechanical sound, and so it changed things a lot.
So what were you triggering on were you taking advantage of like short sequence loops on the octopad, or was it just like explosion sounds?
More explosions. I mean, it was not like I was using loops. I'm more like I would go to the scrap yard nearby and pick a big piece of metal, and then brought it back to the studio. Was hitting it with something, and then we would sample it. And then flip it around and distort it, and Snake at one point was speaking in the, did you say an interphone, like at the door of the building?
Intercom, yeah.
Intercom. At one point, he was speaking into the intercom, and we we were like sampling it upstairs, and it was really cool. But and then I was never really into sequences. Then you have to play with in-ears with a click track, and it gets really difficult live. But mainly hitting the right pads at specific spots with percussive sounds, and that was my main thing.
Are you still doing any of that today, or is that handled more by the engineer?
Yes, I still do that. I did that for the Wake Synchro Anarchy experiment. I still have a newer Octapad, uh, and I don't sample as much anymore because there are many, many, many sounds that you can start from into the unit itself, and so yeah. But I try not to put it everywhere, just to make it sound like a sci-fi soundtrack, really. But I think it's the next goal for us. It's to do a dystopian sci-fi movie soundtrack. We're on a mission right now to try to pitch it, and try to do something. Like last year, I read the book Nuclear War, a Scenario, and it's like the scariest book I ever read. And if this would be made into a movie, we would be the perfect band to record the score for it, I'm sure.
You heard it here. Voivod's out there looking for post-apocalyptic sci-fi soundtrack work. I am positive that's going to happen for you, my man.
Super.
Well, before I let you go, tell us again what's happening this summer to support Symphonique.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm doing like 4 or 5 interviews a day, and the other guys are doing the same, so it's quite crazy. On June 2nd, we're flying to Europe to play. We actually start in Iceland, or it's at Satan Fest. It's at Satan Fest. It's a first for us. So we're excited. Then we go play a couple of festivals in Europe, but we have a stretch in UK and Ireland with our friends. Midnight should be pretty eventful. And then we in July and August we have a whole series of festivals and clubs to play all over Europe. The We Are Connected documentary is coming out as well. And Also, we just released a book called Always Moving by Jeff Wagner. It's like more than 500 pages. So there are a lot of projects in the works. To promote the symphonic shows, we can only do interviews right now, and a few singles there and there. But we do have that one show in January next year. It's to celebrate the 350th anniversary of our hometown. So there are a lot of celebrations happening at the same time. and maybe we're gonna start looking into playing it everywhere. But right now, we're really excited to have the vinyl and the CDs coming out. We wish we would have filmed it, but it was out of our range financially. So we decided to record the audio, which was still tens of thousands of dollars because of the union you have to pay. So maybe next year when we play our hometown with the local orchestra, maybe we can film it, but we would definitely need money from the city to make it happen.
I really hope that happens for you. People deserve to
Yeah,
see
me
this as
too.
well as hear it. But in the meantime, they absolutely need to hear this album. It's really pretty special.
Nice.
Michelle, away. Thank you so much for joining me here on the toilet. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Now I'm getting out of the toilet.
There's plenty of paper for both of us. Don't worry. Thanks for being such a good sport, man. This is fantastic. It really it was such a good lesson. So I appreciate your time and Voivod's been one of my favorite bands since I was a kid. So I love catching up with you guys.
Thank you. Hopefully, we'll see you on the road in October. It might be with our friends Bat, which we toured with.
That,
Yeah, we just did a really crazy tour in March in USA with them, and we hope to do a second leg with them in October.
oh, and so that'll be the North American leg.
Yeah, it will be the East Coast. I don't think we're gonna make it to the West Coast, unfortunately, but probably next year.
I know we have a lot of East Coast listeners, and most importantly, I'm one of them. So that's that's what
Excellent.
matters to me.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Have a great one.
Have a good day. Thanks. Bye.